Hare Krishna. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 3, Chapter number 9, Text number 42. Aham atmatmanam dhata preshta sanpreyasamapi ato mai ratim kuryat dehadiriyat krite priyaha. Aham atmatmanam dhata preshta sanpriyasamapi ato mai ratim kuryat dehadiriyat krite priyaha. Last time. Aham atmatmanam dhatah preshta sanpreyasamapi ato mai ratim kuryat dehadiriyat krite priyaha. Synonyms: Aham, I am; Atma, the super soul; Atma, Atmanam, of all the other souls; Dhatah, director; Preshtaha, the dearest; Sun, being; Preyasam, of all dear things; Api, certainly; Ataha, therefore; Mai, unto me; Ratim, attachment; Kuryad, one should do; Deha Adihi, the body and the mind; Yat Krite, on whose account; Priyaha, very dear. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. I am the super soul of every individual. I am the supreme director and the dearest. People are wrongly attached to the gross and the subtle bodies, but they should be attached to me only. Purport. It's a long one. The Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, is the dearest in both conditioned and in liberated states. When a person does not know that the Lord is the only dearest object, then he is in conditioned state of life, and when one knows perfectly well that the Lord is the only dearest object, he is considered to be liberated. There are degrees of knowing one's relationship with the Lord, depending on the degree of realization as to why the Supreme Lord is the dearest object of every living being. The real reason is clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita 15.7. Mamaivamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha. The living entities are eternally parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. The living entity is called the Atma and the Lord is called the Paramatma. The living entity is called Brahman and the Lord is called the Parabrahman or Parameshwara. Ishvara Parama Krishnaha. The conditioned souls who do not have self-realization accept the material body as the dearmost. The idea of dearmost is then spread all over the body, both concentrated and extended. The attachment for one's own body and its extensions like children and relatives is actually developed on the basis of real living entity. As soon as the real living entity is out of the body, even the body of the most dear son is no longer attractive. Therefore, the living spark or the eternal part of the Supreme is the real basis of affection and not the body. Because the living entities are also parts of the whole living entity, that supreme living entity is the factual basis of affection for all. One who has forgotten the basic principle of his love for everything has only flickering love because he is in Maya. The more one is affected by the principle of Maya, the more he is detached from the basic principle of love. One cannot factually love anything unless he is fully developed in the loving service of the Lord. In the present verse, stress is given to focusing love upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word kuryat is significant here. This means that one must have it. It is just to stress that we must have more and more attachment to the principle of love. The influence of Maya is experienced by part and parcel spiritual entity, but it cannot influence the super soul, the Paramatma. The Mayavadi philosophers, accepting the influence of Maya on the living entity, want to become one with Paramatma. But because they have no actual love for Paramatma, they remain ever entrapped by the influence of Maya and are unable to approach the vicinity of Paramatma. This inability is due to their lack of affection for Paramatma. A rich miser does not know how to utilize his wealth, and therefore, in spite of his being very rich, his miserly behavior keeps him everlastingly a poor man. On the other hand, a person who knows how to utilize wealth can quickly become a rich man, even with a small credit balance. The eyes and the sun are very intimately related because without sunlight, the eyes are unable to see. But the other parts of the body, being attached to the sun as the source of warmth, take more advantage of the sun than do the eyes. Without possessing affection for the sun, the eyes cannot bear the rays of the sun. Or in other words, such eyes have no capacity to understand the utility of the sun's rays. Similarly, the empiric philosophers, despite their theoretical knowledge of Brahman, cannot utilize the mercy of the Supreme Brahman because they lack affection. So many impersonal philosophers remain everlastingly under the influence of Maya because although they indulge in theoretical knowledge of Brahman, they do not develop affection for Brahman, nor do they have any scope for development of affection because of their defective method. A devotee of sun god, even though devoid of eyesight, can see the sun god as he is, even from this planet, whereas one who is not a devotee of sun cannot even bear the glaring sunlight. Similarly, by devotional service, even though one is not on the level of Jnani, one can see the personality of Godhead within himself due to his development of pure love. In all circumstances, one should try to develop love of Godhead, and that will solve all contending problems. So the translation one last time. I am the super soul of every individual. I am the supreme director and the dearest. People are wrongly attached to the gross and the subtle bodies, but they should be attached to me only. So this was a very long purport, and I found it a little challenging to understand it. I went to my usual sources that I hear from, which are 4, 5, and then somehow, I've gathered few nuggets from them, and so yeah, here I go. I'll share whatever I have learned and whatever I've understood so far. So this verse is talking about people who are attached to their bodies, gross and the subtle body. And it's a disease state. We don't understand it, but it's a disease state. What is the real state? The real state is where there is exchange of love. So the very first line where Prabhupada writes that personality of Godhead is the dearest in both situations, both conditioned and liberated. He's often quoted from the Upanishads. That example of 2 birds came to my mind. That image where the Lord is sitting next to us, he's observing us, doesn't interfere with our activities, but he's still there. That, for me, that image invokes, it's an act of love from his side. No matter where we are, what we do, he's with us. So we can understand that he is there for us, but love it's an exchange between 2 people, between 2 living entities, not between an object and another object. That doesn't make it love. Love has to mean an exchange of affection between one living entity to another living entity. So, and just to quickly, point out a few different things that he says. So I'm going to divide my presentation into 3 parts. The first paragraph, where we'll talk about living entities' identity. Second is about the Supreme Lord, who is Paramatma. So first is Atma, then Paramatma, and finally this aspect of affection or love. So who are we? If we think of ourselves as, again, Brahman, Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti, Shabdete, the three levels of realization of Godhead. So Prabhupada calls that as degrees of knowing one's relationship with the Lord. And depending on that degree of realization, we'll understand him, to be dear, dearer, or dearmost. So when we have this understanding of the Supreme Lord as Bhagavan, he becomes our dearmost object of affection. And when that is not the case, which is the conditioned living entity, what happens is our body becomes dear. Anything that is associated with the body, I and mine, becomes dear. Our family becomes dear. Our country may become dear, and so on and so forth. The causes that we are attached to, it may become dear. So I just wanted to quickly sing this song, Bhakti Vinod Thakur's Dainya song from Sharanagati. भूलिया तुम्हारे संसारे आसिया पे नानवेधा भ्याता तुम्हारा चरणे आशियाची आमी बोली बो दुखेर कथा. And then he keeps going. Janani jathare chila maja khona Bishama bandhana pashe. He keeps going on, but then he brings this situation that we find ourselves in. We don't understand it, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur is showing us. He's saying, oh Lord, I forsook you and I came to this world of pain and sorrow. And you know what happened to me? I was in my mother's womb. I saw you and I for a brief moment, actually this message is given in a previous song as well. But here he's saying, at that moment, I swore to you, but birth after birth, I'll worship you. But then what happened? I took birth. I was taken care of, I was shown affection by my relatives. I passed my time that way. I came into this world and day by day, I grew. I played with other children. And I read and I studied. I grew my wealth. I became proud of my education. I took care of my family with undivided attention. But oh Lord, I forgot you. And last line, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, excuse me, Bhardhake ekhona Bhakti Vinoda, Kandiya Katara Ati, Na Bhajiya Tore, Dina Bhrita Gelo, Ekhona Ki Kabe Gati. Obviously, I'm not a Bengali, but the translation is, now in the old age, Bhakti Vinod is sad. He weeps. I failed to worship you, O Lord, and instead passed my life in vain. What will be my fate now? So I was very moved by this song because in this first paragraph of the purport, we're talking about who is the soul and what is our journey, right? Our journey is we've been bound. We are in a conditioned state, and it's almost like it's like a film that we keep replaying. It goes to the end, we rewind it, and we play it again. And this goes on and on and on. And a person like Bhaktivinoda Thakur is showing us, he is not in that state, but he is showing us our situation of being stuck in this reel. We keep going around and around. And so now, having understood that our situation, our life is just not in exchanging these pleasantries, these affections on mundane platform. So just to give another analogy, if I am standing in front of a mirror, another person is standing in front of a mirror, the real exchange of love happens when we are in the real world. But in the mirror, what we see is a reflection. And if there is some exchange of commodity, maybe somebody is thirsty, I give them in the reflection. And you may even see in the reflection, they are absorbing it, taking that cup of water. It still is not satisfying. That is the situation of exchange of love when it is not on the real platform. The symptom is that it is never satisfying. We may find ourselves, and I've been in the situation, and maybe perhaps many of us have been. Even last week, I was in a situation where I felt I was doing something for a family member, but then it wasn't satisfying for them. And when they expressed their dissatisfaction, I felt dissatisfied too. So this exchange of quote unquote affection or love in this in a platform of reflection is not true, and therefore there is never any satisfaction, and that is the symptom. However, my mentor used to say, the only person who can fully satisfy us is Krishna, because he is the Supreme Lord who is endowed with all potencies, and he is complete in himself. There is nothing that he is expecting of us in one sense, but he can still, there is still this exchange that is happening. So this first paragraph is exhorting us to come to that platform of real love, coming to the platform of reality. And to come to the platform of reality, we need to know, who are we? That is, we are not the body, we are the soul. That is lesson number 1, right? Like, we hear spirituality 101, Bhagavad Gita 101 is not, we are the soul. So having understood the soul, we hear from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema, Sadhya Kabhunoy, Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte, Karaya Uday. So as living entities, this Krishna Prema is embedded in our heart. How does it grow? Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte. By listening, the chitta is cleansed. And how does that happen? Again, in the medium for this process is the spiritual master. When we have come to the lotus feet of the spiritual master and we hear from him and his and from the appropriate sources, that sprout of bhakti grows in our heart. So then one might wonder, all right, so I'm not this body, I'm a spirit soul, and Krishna Prema is in my heart. That Krishna also resides in us as Paramatma. So the question may be like, well, if he's also I am in this material body, and so is Paramatma with me, does it mean that he is conditioned materially? And that's where Prabhupada's second purport comes in. That he's saying, Mayavadi philosophers, accepting the influence of Maya, want to become one. And so this is another fundamental quality, that Supreme Lord never comes under Maya. Maya Dhyakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam. So this world is under his control, and he is never controlled by it. Daivihi Esha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya. So it is his Maya, and it is very hard to give up. The influence of it on us is very hard. But not by our own effort, we cannot come out of it. So the Lord is never conditioned. So we have established these two, that what is our position? We are eternal living entities, but that love for Krishna is in our heart. And it's not like the Lord is asking of us that something that we don't have, right? Like so that is where this analogy of the rich miser comes into place. Again, we can see from our own lives, like I have had experience where I go to a family member who may not have been financially super well off, but when you go to their home, you can understand that there is a richness in their home. They feed you the best of things. They welcome you in the best of ways. And, the words with which they speak to you, you can see that their heart is full. Those are the people who are really, really rich. They have that richness in them. And we may also have seen examples, maybe our own selves, where we have something, but then we keep saying, oh, I don't have it. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough affection in me, whatever. And that is the case of being poor. Now, are we being poor? Are we poor? No. This Krishna Prema is in our heart, and that is what is being asked to develop. And as long as we keep this in this artificial condition, we will remain poor. Coming to the last paragraph, where this example of I and the sun is talked about. I had a hard time understanding this analogy, and I heard, like I said, I heard a few different classes by different people, including my spiritual master, but that point was somehow not delved deeper into, or I missed it. Maybe there are other classes, but nevertheless, this is where I wanted to read this quote from Bhakti, The Art of Eternal Love, Srila Prabhupada's book. So, missing Krishna means missing oneself also. Real self-realization and realization of Krishna go together simultaneously. For example, seeing oneself in the morning means seeing the sunrise also. Without seeing the sunshine, no one can see himself. Similarly, unless one has realized Krishna, there is no question of self-realization. Excuse me. Excuse me. So, again, this is my understanding. As long as we are in darkness, we don't see ourselves. But as soon as, we're standing in front of the mirror, even though the mirror is in front of me, I don't see myself. But as soon as the sun rises in the horizon, I can see the sun and I can see myself in the mirror. So the God realization, seeing the sun, and self-realization goes hand in hand, happens at the same time. And any other realization where we say, yes, I have realized that I am Brahman, I am the soul, is incomplete, because actual self-realization happens along with this acknowledgement and development of love for Krishna, because they both happen at the same time. So again, how does this happen? Again, there were a few other verses that came to my mind when this example of sun and I was spoken. We hear Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti. So that Anjana of love has to be applied in our eye. When we look through the eye of love, that is how the sun, the sadhus, that is how they see the Supreme Lord. It is through affection for the Lord. It is not out of curiosity. Although although we hear, right, like, Chaturvida Bhajante Mam, although that may be a starting point, we may be curious, we may be miserable in our current condition. We may want something, but ultimately, when we come to that position of developing that love for Krishna, from that point of time is where, we start to understand who Krishna is. So again, to summarize, affection or love happens between two living entities, and this exchange has to happen on the real platform, not on a platform of reflection, because that we understand it may look like the real thing, but it is never satisfactory. This exchange with Krishna is what will bring us real satisfaction. And but like Bhakti Vinod Thakur shows us in his songs in Sharanagati, that is our life story, that we are in this reel where we're going again and again, hoping for satisfaction, hoping for love, but that is never, it never happens. And to come to that level, to the next level, we have to understand that the darkness that we are in, it is because of Maya Haya Andhakar. But how to come out of the darkness? To look at the sun of Krishna Surya Sama, Maya Haya Andhakar. Yaha Krishna, taha nahi Maya Adhikar. And so when we look at Krishna, and to me, this verse is spoken by the Supreme Lord. So how confidential can that get? Now we hear, this guhya, the secret knowledge, the confidential knowledge. So the first level of confidentiality is to understand who are we. Second level is to understand who is Krishna. The third level, the most confidential, is to understand the relationship he has with people, the exchange of love that happens between him and his devotee. And Krishna is exhorting us to come to that level. And we hear in Chaitanya Charitamrita, I believe Murari Gupta, the Lord says, please correct me if I'm wrong, is not Murari Gupta. Prahlad Maharaj's, can someone remind me his counterpart in Chaitanya Charitamrita?
Vasudev Datta.
Vasudev Datta, thank you. He says, Vasudev Datta says, I am so moved. So many people are suffering. Please let me suffer. And please, you liberate them all because you are the most merciful. And the Lord says, oh, Vasudev, you don't have to suffer. The Lord, He has innumerable universes, innumerable. If one universe gets emptied out, if the conditioned souls are liberated, what big difference does it make to him? You don't have to suffer for them. And so then he says, you can sell me in any marketplace, Vasudev. I am yours, and you can sell me. And that is his position. If we can come, and again, this is not an exchange of a mercantile exchange. You give me love, I give myself to you. That's not how love happens. And so this is for me, when I read this, I was thinking, wow, this is very, very confidential. For an external person, he may say, Krishna is saying, oh, how egoistic. He's saying they should be attached to me only. But actually, we understand within those layers is this most confidential message that there is this sweet exchange that the Lord has with his devotees. Always, like how Vishnu told Durvasa Muni, there is no one in my devotee's heart but me, and there is no one in my heart but them. They cannot think of anything other than me, and I cannot think anything but them. It is to that level that we are being invited to come to, and he's always waiting for us. So I will pause. We are almost at the top of the hour. Please offer your corrections, any suggestions, any other thoughts. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mathaji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Accept.
Mathaji, wonderful class. Thank you for being part of this group, and we want to hear more and more from you. I liked your entire talk. There were particular places where I really liked it when you explained how a person is rich when he's rich in his heart, and it doesn't matter how much material wealth somebody really carries. So thank you so much, Mataji. Hare.
Thank you for your encouragement, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Varsana Mataji, my same feelings. Please accept my humble obeisances. So glad to have you in our group. And it is, you made it very clear. And my wonder is, how is it that such a direct statement from Krishna, that all seems to be hidden away somewhere? It is not available to 99.5% of the population, not even. I mean, it is so clearly said, you don't have to go love each and every individual around you in your bodily sphere of attachment. You have to love me only, and that's the real thing. But, everybody goes on building so many circles. This is my friend circle. This is my family. This is my innermost. Like that, So, thank you very much. Bhakti Vinod Tagore's song was very, of course, very illustrating how we get the real play and again. That I liked very much. Lost in Andhakar. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, the other relationships are on the basis of our relationship with Krishna. And that is when it becomes real for us.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. If there's nothing else, we can sign off for today. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Thank you for being here, and I'm sure the discussion is continuing tomorrow with the next speaker. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.